Bicentennial Man is a film that asks one of the oldest science fiction questions there is. What does it truly mean to be human? Released in 1999, it tells the story of Andrew, a household robot purchased by the Martin family in the year 2005. And yes, it's funny to look back and realize how optimistic that prediction was. We didn't get sentient household robots by 2005, but we did get a story that tried to grapple with humanity, freedom, love, and prejudice through the lens of artificial intelligence. And while Bicentennial Man doesn't always succeed, it's far more interesting than it's often given credit for. So the real question is, does this film fail because of its ideas, or because it tries to juggle too many of them all at once? The first act of Bicentennial Man is easily its strongest. It focuses on Andrew integrating into the Martin household, and we experience this world largely through his perspective. Just like Andrew, we're learning how this future society works. We watch how the family reacts to him, from fear and skepticism to curiosity and affection, and almost immediately it's clear that Andrew is different from other robots. He develops an affinity for classical music, he experiences guilt when he accidentally breaks Little Miss Amanda's favorite horse figurine, and instead of simply replacing it, he carves her a new one out of wood as an apology. This moment is small, quiet, and incredibly important. It tells us everything we need to know about Andrew. He doesn't just follow instructions, he feels. When Richard Martin, or Sir, brings Andrew back to the robotics company, the film introduces its first major philosophical conflict. The company's owner sees Andrew's individuality as a defect, a flaw to be corrected. Andrew's growing consciousness isn't something to be celebrated, it's something to be erased. They even suggest scrapping him entirely. Sir Martin refuses. Instead, he chooses to protect Andrew and begins teaching him about humanity, treating him less like property and more like a person. And this is where the film really shines. It allows us to slowly bond with Andrew, to feel his curiosity, confusion, and wonder. The pacing here is deliberate and it works. We're not rushed, we're invited to grow alongside him. And honestly, isn't that exactly how a story like this should begin? But unfortunately, this careful storytelling doesn't last. As the film moves into Act 2, the structure begins to unravel. Time jumps become frequent and damaging. We skip years, sometimes decades, without seeing how Andrew's humanity evolves during that time. One of the most emotionally compelling relationships in the film is between Andrew and Little Miss Amanda. We watch her grow up and we see how deeply Andrew cares for her. That bond feels earned. So when the film suddenly jumps ahead to Amanda being old enough to marry, it feels rushed and underdeveloped. Wouldn't it have been more powerful to actually see Amanda's emotional growth happen instead of being told it did? These time jumps create a recurring problem. The film constantly tells us about major developments instead of showing them. Andrew suddenly wants his freedom, but this desire feels like it comes out of nowhere. Sir Martin grants it, but then banishes Andrew from the house, which feels completely out of character, based on everything we've seen so far. This is a man who defended Andrew against being destroyed, who acknowledged him as family, so why does this moment play out the way it does? It feels less like a natural emotional beat and more like the plot forcing Andrew into the next phase of the story. And this pattern continues. Andrew builds a house on the beach, he opens a bank account, he becomes incredibly wealthy by selling handcrafted clocks in a futuristic world full of advanced technology, but we never see how society reacts to any of this. We're told earlier that the world wouldn't accept an independent robot, yet Andrew seems to navigate society with very little resistance. How did he buy land? How did people react to a robot owning beachfront property for decades? How did banks, governments, and corporations respond? These are fascinating questions, and the film mostly ignores them. Andrew's journey continues as he searches the world for other robots like himself. This quest ultimately fails, reinforcing the idea that Andrew is truly alone. His last hope is a female robot model, but she turns out to only have a personality chip, not genuine consciousness. This leads Andrew to Rupert, the son of the original robot designer. With Rupert's help, Andrew begins modifying himself, becoming more biologically human over time. This is one of the more interesting arcs in the film, as Andrew's external transformation mirrors his internal emotional growth. As he becomes more human, he looks more human. His rigid metallic shell slowly gives way to skin, expressions, and vulnerability. And I actually think this is one of the film's best visual metaphors for humanity. Being human isn't about how you're made, it's about how you feel, how you love, and how you change. Andrew eventually returns to Amanda, now an elderly woman, and meets her granddaughter Portia. After Amanda's death, a scene that is genuinely emotional and arguably the film's strongest moment. Andrew confronts a painful truth: everyone he loves will die. This realization pushes him to take the final step and become fully human by creating artificial organs that will allow him to age and die. And this is where the film leans heavily into romance, sometimes to its detriment. Andrew and Portia fall in love, but the relationship feels strange and underdeveloped. The film seems to expect the audience to transfer their emotional attachment from Andrew and Amanda directly onto Portia simply because she's played by the same actress. Did that work for you, or did it feel unsettling and unearned? The third act centers on Andrew's fight to be legally recognized as human. This should be the emotional and philosophical climax of the film, but it feels rushed. Andrew petitions the world government only to be denied because he is immortal. So he chooses mortality, he chooses death, and in a tragic twist, he dies moments before the government officially declares him human. On paper, this is poetic. In execution, it feels underdeveloped. Andrew's desire to be recognized as human was introduced early, then largely forgotten, only to resurface at the very end. Imagine how much more powerful this would have been if Andrew had been fighting for recognition throughout the entire film, challenging laws, facing discrimination, slowly pushing society to confront its own definition of humanity. This leads to the film's biggest issue. Bicentennial Man feels like several different movies stitched together. At first, it's a family comedy about adjusting to a robot, then it's a coming of age story about self identity, then it's a road movie about searching for others like you, then it becomes a romance, then a legal drama. Any one of these could have been a full film on its own. Instead, we get all of them, and none of them are fully explored. Do you think this film would have worked better as a limited series rather than a single movie? Despite all of this, Robin Williams is the glue that holds Bicentennial Man together. His performance as Andrew is subtle, restrained, and deeply empathetic. Even beneath layers of prosthetics and robotic stiffness, he conveys emotion through tiny movements and gentle inflections. He makes Andrew feel alive long before the story officially allows him to be. Honestly, without Robin Williams, I don't think this film would be remembered at all. The themes of Bicentennial Man, freedom, humanity, love, and prejudice are powerful, but they're never fully realized. The film often feels like they're trying to manipulate tears rather than earn them. We're told that these themes matter, but we rarely see them challenged in a meaningful way. Andrew experiences surprisingly little prejudice for a being that society supposedly doesn't accept. His freedom rarely feels threatened. His struggles often resolve themselves almost immediately. That lack of resistance undercuts the emotional weight of his journey. And then there's the love story. The transition from Amanda to Portia is one of the most uncomfortable aspects of the film. Andrew's relationship with Amanda was built over decades of shared experiences. His relationship with Portia feels like a shortcut. It's less about connection and more about narrative convenience. So where does that leave Bicentennial Man? I think it's a deeply flawed but genuinely heartfelt film. It's too long, too scattered, and too unfocused to be a masterpiece, but it's also sincere. It wants to say something meaningful, and thanks to Robin Williams, it mostly succeeds in making us care. If you're in the mood for a slow, emotional sci-fi film that isn't afraid to be sentimental, Bicentennial Man is worth watching. Just don't expect it to fully live up to its potential, and maybe that's the most human thing about it. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.